Hello there, this is James Scrofty, 1978, and in spite of the fact that at best the author Daniel Goldhagen has an Israel-focused persecution complex the size of the vast international anti-Semitic conspiracy which he believes exists to destroy that country, and at worst is a raging Islamophobe using the undeniable cancer of anti-Semitism in the so-called Muslim world as a basis for pro-Israeli propaganda, I've continued reading The Devil That Never Dies, exposing the rise and threat of global anti-Semitism in the 21st century, and just as the author's observation that anti-Semites are bigoted against the spectre of Jewness led me to make the video Links Daar is the Underbar, explaining how this is also the basis of all Islamophobia, his observation in Chapter 8 that modern global anti-Semitism views Jews through a primarily political lens rather than an ethnic, religious or cultural one caused a similar realization to crystallize in my mind. In summary, Daniel Goldhagen's point is that similar to how people who are originally from, or whose parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents were originally from Mexico, Guatemala, Brazil, Argentina, Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, or anywhere else in Central or South America, regardless of where they were born, what language they speak, their religion or lack thereof, their political leaning, sexuality, or any other aspect of their identity, are all lumped together in American politics under the label of the Hispanic and all Latino vote, and by American not racists and not xenophobes as the immigrant threat, often simply referred to as Mexicans, who will somehow destroy America by growing to outnumber real, i.e. white Americans by 2050, Jews are now perceived as being a threat to superior Western, i.e. white civilization, because even if they only converted to Judaism or don't practice the religion at all, thus nullifying all charges that their religion or biology makes them a threat, they will still side with Jews, voting for Jewish interests, and therefore at the very least passively enabling the vast Jewish conspiracies that non-Jews have been concocting and screaming about for centuries before Hitler was even born. And if you honestly can't see how this relates in any way to Muslims, then congratulations, because you're either stupid, grossly and willfully ignorant to the point of ripping your own eyes out rather than ever allowing yourself to perceive reality, delusional or simply lying, since after all, isn't one of the main pillars of not bigotry against Muslims and Islam the accusation that Islam isn't a religion but rather a violent political ideology? Is not the defining root fear of not Islamophobia because it's not an irrational fear of Islam, the not paranoid, not delusion that all Muslims act as a monolithic hive mind to advance their collective agenda, such as, Daniel Goldhagen ever so subtly implying that countries from Iran to Saudi Arabia and organisations from ISIS and Hezbollah to the YPG are only pretending to despise one another, wage war against each other, be allied with the United States against one another, and each seek the other's total extermination to cover up the fact that they're all united as the masterminds of the vast global anti-Semitic conspiracy to exterminate Jews by destroying poor little innocent democratic Israel. Of course it is, to the point at which simply using reality to debunk any notion that Muslims, Jews, feminists, liberals, leftists, or anyone else are all working together as part of the vast global conspiracy to destroy superior straight white cisgendered and conservative male civilization is completely futile. But damn though, I think I just gave away the punchline there, because although in the wake of Charlottesville, having realised that like most of the self-proclaimed Western world, I had turned a blind eye to the rise of anti-Semitism in our midst and here on the internet in particular for far too long, I had started reading up on anti-Semitism on the assumption that it would somehow prove to be separate and unique. While it's undeniable that, as its history demonstrates, anti-Semitism is more terrifyingly widespread, inexplicable and pernicious than any other bigotry in existence, here in the self-proclaimed Western world in the 21st century, and particularly here on the internet, no different from the spectre of the Muslim, the Mexican, the gay agenda, the liberal agenda, the trans agenda, the interracial couple, the leftist, and on and on and on. As far as I can gather, the spectre of the Jew is, as I explained in an old video also linked down as the underbar, merely another of the many masks of straight, white and cisgendered men's fear that our power and privilege is being stripped away from us simply because the world is changing in ways that threaten our comfort, privilege, entitlement and security. With, as the article linked down as the underbar explains, so-called men's rights activism often being a gateway to the alt-right, come for the misogyny, stay for the racism. And why? Because as Daniel Goldhagen points out in his book when he isn't falsely accusing Human Rights Watch and other organisations of existing solely to stoke the fires of global anti-Semitism by spreading poisonous lies and propaganda against Israel, and as we all know, the only reason that anyone ever criticises or condemns Israel is because of our latent and burning anti-Semitism, he makes the excellent point that in the internet age more than ever before, as nationality, ethnicity and other aspects of our identity become increasingly irrelevant and obsolete, what defines us more than anything else is our politics, how we choose to interact with the world. And although this is a gross overgeneralisation and oversimplification for the sake of making a point, increasingly in the 21st century, the concepts of left and right as each perceives the other have less and less to do with economics or politics, and instead are increasingly determined by the single defining question of whether or not you identify with and defend the supposed natural order in which straight, white, cisgendered and conservative men rule the world. Indeed, as my personal experience now demonstrates, to be accused of being part of the far left these days has essentially nothing to do with economics or politics, but instead is merely to be or advocate anything by which white boys and their token supporters feel threatened. And the only reason I can see as to why Jews are increasingly regarded as being at the heart of the alleged global conspiracy to hurt white boys' delicate feelings and take their toys away is that they've been accused of engineering such conspiracies for millennia, making them the quote-unquote logical target, willfully ignoring the fact that in one breath they are condemning Muslim anti-Semitism and calling on Jews to join them and help stop the Islamization of Europe, and then in the very next breath declaring that Jews are deliberately engineering that self-same Islamization. But although it may seem that I'm dismissing this threat as the mere whinings of butthurt crybabies, on the contrary, as any woman who survived a violent assault by a man with whom she refused to have sex, ridiculed, or otherwise emotionally hurt can tell you, there are few things more dangerous than emotionally stunted and egocentric man-children lashing out because they think that the world owes them everything, since they are naturally dominant and superior, and thus believe that social justice, equity, equality and progress, and even things such as technological and social development leading to increased immigration and globalization are a direct and deliberate attack upon them, their egos, and upon the natural order. Why else do you think that people such as this made Donald Trump their Emperor God King? So no, as the murder of Heather Heyer, the countless other murders committed by angry and disenfranchised far-right thugs, and the election of an orange orangutan to the White House, at least in part because of their resentment and bitterness against all things progressive demonstrates, we cannot underestimate the threat that they pose, not even for a single second. However, neither can we ignore the reality that the sole basis of their violent hatred and murderous outrage is merely the fear of any change that hurts their delicate feelings, that all of their cries of white genocide and warnings about the destruction of white culture and downfall of white civilization, these all simply rationalise the fact that being confronted with the realities of cis-het white male privilege, racism, misogyny, rape culture and what have you, such as the fact that yes, slavery was a bad thing, and no, white people didn't suffer just as much, makes them feel icky inside, along with the mortal terror that they are nothing without their straight white cis male privilege, and that soon marginalised groups will turn the tables on them. And so, bearing this in mind, whether they're lashing out at feminists, Jews, Muslims, leftists, or the gay agenda, often depends entirely upon what they feel poses the greatest threat to their egos that week, with, as I indicated earlier, Jews, the liberal elite, globalization, the New World Order, the Rothschilds, or the Illuminati, terms which are often interchangeable, by the way, merely being, in their paranoid and delusional little minds, the final destination of their nebulous, meandering, and often self-contradictory conspiracy theories. This in fact being the reason why self-proclaimed rationalists and skeptics on YouTube evolved from attacking the threat that they perceived as being posed by creationism and fundamentalist Christianity to the threat of Islam, to feminism and social justice, and are now screaming from the rooftops that they're not white supremacists honest. Well, okay, a bit. They sympathise with them a little, but they have every right to do so because it's all about free speech. And therefore, bearing in mind that, as I explained in the previous video that I uploaded on this channel, attacking them simply fuels their persecution complex and reinforces the narrative that we are the violent thugs imposing tyranny by denying their rights and freedoms, while we must remain on constant alert and be ready to defend ourselves and others at a moment's notice, be it physically, legally, or otherwise, we have to focus our efforts on containing the threat, not attacking, but on minimising the spread, at least in part by educating and reaching out to others, ensuring that both literally and metaphorically, online and in real life, the alt-right, white supremacists, and not white supremacist butts are always the ones cowering in the bandstand while thousands of people surround them in the hopes that one day they'll finally grow the fuck up and get the fuck over themselves.